Hello, this is Senator Matt Harrington of York County. I thank you for joining me for this week's Republican radio address. I want to share the status of several bills before the legislature that threaten the constitutional rights of Mainers. For years, law enforcement officers have been sounding the alarm about how Maine's lack of access to mental health care and resources are putting our communities in danger. From drug addiction and homelessness to violent crimes, the failure to address these issues has put citizens in harm's way. Sadly, this came to a head in October when a known severely mentally ill individual was able to perpetrate a horrific shooting that claimed the lives of 18 innocent people and injured 13 others. It is a day that will take years or even decades to heal from. We still have more to learn about the details of the shooting in Lewiston. However, what we have learned through an interim report issued last week by the Lewiston Commission investigating that heartbreaking day is that nothing in the gun legislation currently before the legislature would have prevented that tragedy. But before I get into those proposals specifically, let me recap how we got here. Responsible, pragmatic lawmakers and gun rights groups have been waiting for the Commission's final report to gain a full understanding of how the events in Lewiston unfolded. Meanwhile, leading anti-gun groups and gun control activists on the other side of the aisle jumped at the opportunity to play politics with this tragedy. In fact, it didn't take them very long. While the scene was still very active, Moms Demand Action CEO blamed Maine lawmakers in a now deleted tweet for voting down a 72-hour waiting period in the last session. California Governor Gavin Newsom demanded banning commonly owned firearms, requiring a license to carry, and universal background checks. National and our own local media outlets joined the cause through irresponsible pundits and editorials demanding a red flag law and dismissing Maine's well-reasoned weapons protection order or yellow flag process. The problem is none of these policy demands fit the crisis that occurred in Lewiston. The shooter owned firearms for years, he was a U.S. Army reservist, and he passed even the most extensive background checks. Unfortunately, these activists didn't bother to wait for the Commission's report on the facts or what reforms are needed to ensure another Lewiston does not happen. It's more apparent that Democrat leadership and their anti-gun allies just didn't want to wait for those facts. Democrats have proposed redefining definitions of the most commonly owned firearms, mandating 72-hour waiting period to purchase firearms, implementing universal background checks, and more. At a recent press conference, they even admitted this extremely restrictive slate of policies would not have stopped the shooter. Instead, these lawmakers think Maine needs to pass gun control because other less safe states like California and New York have already done so. Maine Republicans are taking a much different approach. Our caucus, which includes several of my fellow law enforcement officers, understands the need to address the real-life issues surrounding Lewiston. By ensuring the state shares critical mental health data about dangerous individuals like the shooter, we can block violent people from obtaining firearms. Investments in mental health care resources would ensure Mainers in crisis receive the care they so desperately need. Republicans agree with some of the governor's mental health initiatives to curb the mental health crisis in our state. By enforcing existing laws and holding criminals accountable, we can also keep dangerous individuals off the streets. As a law enforcement officer, LD 2238, the 72-hour waiting period proposal, concerns me in particular. This leaves law-abiding Mainers defenseless, especially women in very rural parts of the state where law enforcement may be hours away during an emergency. What the Lewiston Commission's interim report did show is a series of human errors that began in New York. It showed our yellow flag process, still a newer process for law enforcement, could have worked with better training. Those are issues we can and should solve. Unfortunately, Democrat leadership has ignored these facts. Now is the time for lawmakers to come together to find legislative solutions that fit the facts that our constituents need in Maine. As the legislature debates the gun control measures over the next few weeks, I encourage you to reach out to your local lawmaker, express your concerns, and urge them to oppose these unconstitutional measures. Again, this is Senator Matt Harrington of York County. I thank you for listening.